Vacant, particularly in this current biennium, meaning it has been vacant now for more than a year, almost a year and a half. To me, that's a position we don't need. And short of those in public safety, where we've exempted that, we talked about this during the campaign. If a position has not been filled since the last budget was passed, we should permanently eliminate that in the next state budget.
Are these 5 bills the basis of your agenda in this special session? Are these your top priorities?
Yeah, we have at least one more, although, again, working with some of the Democrats that came in to meet with us, there may be more on top of that, but one more critical piece in terms of the tax cut for small businesses. We're just working out the logistics of that. Originally, we had talked about small businesses, 50 employees or under having a tax cut. We're still looking to target it to that group, but since the State Department of Revenue doesn't sort out on individual income taxes the difference between a small business and an individual just paying income taxes, we're looking at doing it through gross receipts, and we should have that ready to go in the next day or so.
Democrats have brought up a lot of their priorities. Anything that they've brought to your attention that you think you could get behind?
Yeah, they, Representative Barca, along with Senator Miller, but Barca in particular, who worked on some of the bipartisan economic development efforts, was interested in our, what we've already talked about, moving towards more of an economic development corporation to give us more flexibility and viability. He's got some tweaks he'd like to see in that. I think we can work out, if not all, at least many of those. And they've got some ideas in terms of job tax credits, some other credits out there that I think we can work together on. Again, we've just talked about them. We assigned our staff to follow up on some of the details, so we don't have a specific announcement today. But I would think in the next couple of days, those are some of the things, if not all of the things that were brought up by the 2 Democratic leaders, are things we can work together on.
And Representative Barker suggested that maybe the special session should be reserved for things that are going to provide more immediate results, and express some concern about things like the regulatory issues and health savings, that maybe those are more long-term and should not be a part of the special session. What do you think?
Well, I was certainly open to the initiatives that Representative Barca talked about. I would argue, and I think many of the things he brings up are good ideas, I would argue the most immediate impact is not going to be just from the technical reaction to what we passed. It's going to be from the reaction of employers who see a change, who not only take advantage of those changes, but who see the change. So for me, actually, regulatory relief does play a key part, because if you're an employer, and while there are plenty of employers in the state, like there are many people, unfortunately, who are hurting, there's also plenty of employers that I've found repeatedly around the state, both before the election, but even in the last 2 months, who tell me, we want to add jobs. We're ready to add jobs. In fact, when I was in here, I had a steady line of small business owners who told me, boy, I'm looking to add another 10, 15, 20 more employees. They were excited to hear what we talked about yesterday. The more we can show them that things are going to be easier to do business in the state in the future, the more I think they take that leap of faith and start putting the people to work even in the next few weeks. So I think in both cases, not just things that can be applied immediately, but things long-term, send a message that it's good to do business here in Wisconsin.
Governor, if you were going to veto any kind of a tax increase, why is it necessary to pass a bill that would require a supermajority?
2 reasons. One, I think it sends a clear message to employers that it's not just my point of view, but that it's the viewpoint of the members of the State Assembly and the State Senate. And secondly, I think it sets a long-term precedence. Even though legally, anyone here in this Capitol knows that you cannot, short of a constitutional amendment, tie the hands of a future legislature, a future governor. I know, having been here in the 90s when we passed 2/3 funding for school aids, it was up until recently, before that was changed, even though technically there was nothing that bound the next legislature for enacting it. To me, I think putting that in the statutes, potentially even looking in the future about setting that aside as a constitutional amendment to further make that clear to the public, I think is an important message.
Scott, a follow-up on that issue. Some people say a fee increase is a tax increase. So how are you going to break out, this is a tax increase, it needs a supermajority, this is a fee increase and a borrowing? Yeah,
we define that, right, we define that through our statutory language, but to me, what I've always said, even aside from just the statutes, is if it is something that there's not an alternative to, that's more likely a tax. I mean, there's taxes out there, but when I was at the county, for example, if you had something at the local government level that applied to everyone who got garbage, you know, alternative garbage, that's not a fee increase, that's a tax increase. If you had something like a golf course or a boat slip or something specific where you have an option that's a tax increase.
What about a license plate fee increase from 75 to 90, tax or fee?
Well, it's technically under the statutes a fee, but for us, again, we're going to try to avoid things that go across the board. We want to have options. When I look at transportation, I look at other alternatives out there, like, for example, are there ways that people want to go to premium for something? Could they get that? To me, that's a fee as opposed to a tax. If people don't have to do that, if there's an alternative out there, it's a fee as opposed to a tax.
So
Governor, you talk about consumer protection as it relates to tort reform. Last year, we reported that DATCAP was grossly exaggerating the amount of money returned to jilted consumers. And Representative Voss even called it consumer fraud in and of itself. What are your intentions in relation to the consumer protection element of the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection?
Well, we want to be strong, and part of it, and when you did that story, one of the things we noted was making sure there's a good working relationship through the Department of Justice as well as the Department of Trade, Agriculture, and Consumer Protection. So having Ben Bransell working hand in hand with J.B. Van Hollen and his staff, I think that's also very important to make sure that if there are consumer protection problems, those are things that immediately are turned over to the Department of Justice, and I think we can have a good working relationship on that. But again, not only in this department, but across the board, we want to be transparent. We want, whether it's there, whether it's talking about the Economic Development Corporation and how many jobs come in, I think it's important not only for the public, but it's important for me and our state agencies that we hold those agencies and those corporations accountable for whether it's consumer protection complaints, whether it's job creation goals, all those sorts of things are things that would be a good executive and be accountable to the people of the state. We need to have good numbers, and we need to make them transparent and help them to the public.
Governor, will you take a position on the county exec's race?
Well, I take the last one on the reports when we get back to Kevin. That's one of those where, I'll have to look at the future. Certainly Representative Jeff Stone is someone I've worked with in the past, have a high degree of respect for, but we'll take a look at who all the candidates are out there and ultimately decide, one, whether or not I should get in, and two, whether or not it helps others. Thank you.